Lou, welcome to the Z Marketing Podcast. Thank you for being with us.
Zeb, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always great to have on a neighbor in Boca Raton.
This,
So tell us a little bit about, for those who don't know you, I like to zoom out in my first question usually. Who's Lou Diamond and what do you do?
it's a long-winded answer, but I'll make it real short. I'm a connecting and influence expert. I'm a professional speaker, author, podcaster, put on this planet to help people connect, engage, and win so they can thrive in their lives, their businesses, and their passions. Hopefully that's quick
Awesome.
enough.
Yeah. It's like it's an elevator pitch essentially, is what I try to get in like that first question there. That was awesome. And you know a thing or two about podcasting. From my research that I could deduce, you're a sales and marketing coach. You help people achieve their goals, and you also have a podcast platform. You help people produce their podcasts and turn their podcasts into revenue generators
Mhm.
with Thrive Loud. Can you maybe go into a little bit for my audience what Thrive Loud is all about?
So I'll call it a happy accident. Uh, about going way back to when I first started work, I worked in professional services and consulting. I when the internet first came out, I was actually helping some of the earliest companies launch their first websites. I then made a move and a shift to Wall Street, where I worked in institutional sales for a period of about 14 years. And then I decided there was a unique way I had about connecting with people, not selling or managing accounts or doing stuff like that, or growth or business development, all these terms that you always hear. To me, it was about the connections. And it led me to writing my first book called Master the Art of Connecting. And when I did that, I started going on a whole bunch of podcasts and I started going on a whole bunch of radio programs, TVs, promoting the book as I was going around and being a professional speaker, showing how you can better connect and helping people understand what that actually meant was a whole journey onto itself. And while I was going as a guest on lots of podcasts, like being a guest here, there was a couple of podcasts that I didn't like the formats that they were doing or felt that there was something missing from the universe. And I ended up creating what was the first podcast I'd ever done, which was Thrive Loud. And it was to feature those thriving in their lives, their businesses, and their passions. I had a lot of connections, and I wanted to kind of decode what makes somebody thrive. Lo and behold, close to 10 years later, over 1,100 episodes, uh, Thrive Loud became like the entire business. It became the production company where we help other people produce their podcasts. Became the consulting arm where I help people connect through every conversation. It helped to launch the idea of the book Speak Easy to connect with every conversation. So all the methodologies and everything came in this journey, in this entrepreneurial journey, really trying to feature how important it is to connect. And what I'll say about podcasting is that, Zeb, this is the most impressive connect working tool you will ever come across. And I'm using that term intentionally. It is not a networking tool. It's not just about making connections. It's about making connections with an inspired network of people. Nowhere else in the world can you have a conversation with another person, learn about them, tap into what their businesses are about or their passions or something that they really care about, and get everybody else to hear about it, which is like an expansive and explosive way to do it. And if done right, and if done in the correct ways that I've taught people how to connect over the years, it can become an incredible engine to your business. And that's what I've been helping other companies come through Thrive Loud. And hopefully that was a good enough recap for you.
Amazing. Sounds like it's thriving.
Nicely
And
done.
and that's actually you kind of answered one question I had was, what came first, like the consulting and then the podcast, or was it like the podcast and then the consulting? So it sounds to me like from what you're saying, you figured out that podcasting could be one engine, one great tactic of growth, but you started your own sort of as a way to show people a model of what a podcast should be, or did I kind of recap that
No,
right?
no, I'll give you the order, and you're not too far off. Consulting was the first aspect of the business, and professional speaking, where I was literally being brought into companies across the country, across the globe, going around and speaking this message of connecting. The podcast became a way for me to market myself. And what turned out was that I realized something very powerful In hosting my own podcast, I started making connections, not only with listeners and the network of people that were watching or viewing on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever it was that we created our program, but the person I was having the conversation with ended up wanting to do business with us as well. And I recognized, oh my God, I can go speak to any CEO. I can go connect with any major leader or other business partner and make that alliance in a format that really does enable me to have that moment no different than a sales pitch or a business meeting. I mean, that's really the most effective component to what these shows can be. And on top of that, you're connecting with one another, you're helping one another, you're exchanging great ideas, you're really bringing two worlds together. And when you do that, you can see where the overlaps are, you can see where things might be missing. And that's some of the basic skills that I've always taught top performers and leaders when they're trying to connect better on the things that you can do. So podcasting was like a blown up, exuberant form of what I've been trying to do. So with all of that, the order though kind of evolved almost simultaneously. I was doing the show for myself, and then there's a real funny story. About 3 or 4 years ago, a couple of my other podcast friends, and we started talking about this before we hit record, they had done a podcast, they did a bunch, and they did this term that I called pod fading, where
Hmm.
they fade out of their interest in doing the podcast. And most people will say, oh, I'm not monetizing it or I'm not making money with it. And I would always respond back, how are you not? And I would walk through all the examples of how the podcast has helped introduce me to certain people and bring in new business opportunities, how the marketing of it has got me hired to speak on certain events. And in turn, in actually a lot of people and a lot of other podcasters that I knew were going through this pain that this individual was going through. And I stepped back and I said, maybe I could help them. And what I ended up doing was I ended up doing a course called Speakeasy Podcast, how to turn your podcast into podcast. We love that expression. I know it's
I
cheesy, but it's fun.
love it. No, it's
So,
great.
so we did three of these courses, and the courses were a huge hit. And I made a requirement. You had to have a certain number of episodes. You had to have been doing it for a while, and somehow the podcast had to be integrated to your business. And to those that are listening, if you have a podcast, and if it's a passion project, awesome. I've one of the most successful marketers that I know, Jay Bear, Hall of Fame professional speaker, has
He's been on this podcast.
so Jay's been on mine. He's an amazing marketer. Um, After he sells his marketing business, decides to follow his passion project and launches the Tequila podcast, his Tequila Jay Bear on social media, basically, which is like a podcast. And before you know it, it blows up bigger than anything he's ever done in 30 years of business. And I joke about it that it's a really powerful tool in utilizing this platform. The key is knowing how you have to do it. And the key is knowing the steps. It isn't just putting something out there, it's knowing the right steps. So after that course and all these people who were pod fading and now love the course, love the content, love what I was doing, they then turned back to me and said, but I need your help doing it. I'll be completely honest, Zev, I wasn't ready initially when that first answer came back because I was ready and doing it for my own business, but I never thought that I'd have to do it for others. And then I recognized, or maybe more importantly, my much better half recognized maybe this is something you should be doing. And that's exactly what we did. We made a shift to build the infrastructure for it, be able to handle it, and take on the right organic growth at the right time. And the most glorifying thing that has happened is the clients who we are helping to produce their shows have turned back to me and say, I've already closed a new piece of business. I brought in a new client. I just
Wow.
made a partnership with someone that never would have happened if I didn't make this step. That's where I get all excited about helping people connect. And that's what I love about this medium that enables you to do it. So that's kind of the order and the flow of how things happen, Zev.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I kind of saw a taste of what you're talking about when way back in feel like 2016, something like that. I was like everybody else. I was contributing to Huffington Post. They had an open
Yeah.
contributor column, and it just dawned on me one day. I was at my friend's birthday party, and I was like, and he's in PR, and I just thought of this like, hey, why don't I actually use this to maybe have conversations with favorite authors, business leaders, people I wouldn't otherwise have an excuse to talk to, just to, be able to pick their brains more, maybe get connections I wouldn't otherwise get. And I used that as a vehicle at the time. It did get me people. It was actually the first time I interviewed Jay Bear. And then because I had that, the same friend, introduced me to a guy who he had this fintech cybersecurity company.
Mhm.
And he said, I'd like you to get to have him, interview him for your column. I was just doing my friend a solid. He had a PR firm. And I said, I wasn't really interested, to be honest. I said, one of the detail about him though that was interesting. I said that he works with Frank Abagnale, the famous
Yeah.
con artist turned FBI, security consultant.
The
Um,
inspiration to Catch Me If You Can.
exactly. Leonardo DiCaprio played him in Catch Me If You Can. And I thought, all right, if you can get Frank on, I'll do it. Um, the next day, I wasn't expecting it. Okay, Frank said yes. I'm like, what? And I just so happened that I was like toying with starting a podcast. So I had like I did like a Zoom. I recorded it. I had never recorded it before. I didn't know if I'd even use it. But they closed the Huffington Post column. Couldn't even publish the interview. And I thought, well, I was gonna do the podcast anyway, and that was sort of how I got into it. And like you, I've experienced getting meetings with people I don't think would ever have met with me otherwise. Some of my favorite gurus and leaders. And it's been just a fantastic journey. Part passion project, part business and revenue generator. It has done that, but I want to take it to the next level and start doing it more. And I know many people listening to this are thinking the same thing. What advice can you give? I know not going to make you give us the whole podcast course, crash course, but what are a few tips you can share with people who have a podcast or are thinking to start a podcast, turn into money for their business?
So I'm going to start off with the secret of podcasting. Would you like to know, Zev, what it is?
Yes.
I know your listeners are just on the edge of their seat right now. If they've made it this far into the interview, as I always joke. So this is important as it relates to podcasting. It doesn't matter if they listen or watch your program initially. I want to repeat that. It does not matter if they watch or listen to your program initially. It matters if they know that it happened. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine was a guest on the show, a good friend of mine, and I was very excited about people who were going to be able to hear this guy's story. This person had a tremendous, successful story in Hollywood, truly from the mailroom to being a top executive producer of amazing shows and an unbelievable career, one he probably never could have even dreamed of. And I remembered I was really excited about it. And for the first time at that point, I used some of my personal promotion of that particular episode. And I shared it across my Facebook pages or whatever it might have been. And when that happened, uh, people came up to me, Zev, and they asked me, said, hey, I saw that you had this particular guest on your show. By the way, the guest name is Mark Bombeck, who's amazing. You can go look him up. And I'm like, oh, what did you think of it? And there was this pause. I didn't get to it yet, but I'm going to. I remember I left and I was in the car. I was talking to my wife and I said to her, man, they're not listening to the podcast. And she reverted back to me and said, she goes, yeah, but they knew about it. What we have turned into in our world is it doesn't matter when a show is on television anymore or when something airs, right? We can watch on demand whenever the heck we want. And we have to understand that the knowledge of that your program exists is important. Most of the people who initially start podcasting with me, and these are shows that I've helped produce, are completely obsessed with the sound quality, that what's being said, the making it an edited, polished version, like it looks like a brand new shiny Rolls Royce coming off the production line. I
Mhm.
want to make it clear that the most successful podcasts are the most authentic ones that just are more conversational. And two, it's about building the brand of the program because not every single guest or not every topic or not every theme that your episode is about is going to resonate with everybody. It's going to though resonate with somebody. And if you could come up with that consistent message of what it is that you're doing and you use social media and other means to promote the show. I personally went on television spots other people's podcasts, radio programs, promoting my podcast to tell people about it. If
Mhm.
they knew that I had that particular guest on, they knew that this that particular episode featured this, maybe I'm going to connect with someone else that it's out there. Or maybe more importantly, when they're ready to check it out, they will. That is some of the key social media marketing techniques that we've learned. And there's a frequency on making sure people know about your show. So I always think about this. I've written a couple of books. What everyone who's ever written a book knows is the book writing process. When you finally get the book in your hand, or it's on the shelves or available on Amazon or wherever you're selling it, that's only the halfway journey. The real business of promoting your book begins. And that's the real work. It's about telling people where they can go get it, marketing it appropriately. Same with your podcast. So, those who are starting their podcast, I know it's a long winded answer here. The secret of podcasting is making sure they know about your podcast is more important than the episodes and podcast itself.
Love it. And that's so true. You know, marketing, perception's everything. You have the best product, best service, no one ever hears about it. It doesn't exist. And that's the same with podcasts. I think it's almost a podcast, even though now everyone and their mother has a podcast. Like, you know, back when we started podcasting, it wasn't so, not everybody had one. But I think it lends credibility, kind of like a book. I think most people never actually read the book. But you know what? It gets you invited on the podcast.
Yeah.
Someone has a book, you get invited on the show. They announce when they're saying speaker, business person, you know, whatever, an author. It helps the bio. Um, I have, you know, one kind of last question is what's your strategy, or what do you recommend people in terms of having their own podcast versus being on others? Like, I often tell people the first thing they should do if they're trying to get more, you know, attention for their business or nonprofit is guest on a bunch of podcasts. Go go on the shows that already have listeners, already have eyeballs, kind of siphon other people's attention back to you. You can kind of piggyback off it, kind of like the concept of influencer marketing.
Yeah.
Go where there already is reach and engagement. But I also think having your own is important because it might be how you get on people's in the first place. It's sort of a vehicle for people to learn about you. So, what's your recommendation? What mix should there be?
Great question, and an important lesson that I teach every one of the podcast hosts that we produce their shows for. And we teach them two very important numbers, 1 and 50. So let's talk about one first. One is to have your own show, and once a week is a great cadence, or, you know, some people do once a month, many people do more than that. But at a bare minimum, there's a frequency, and focused on that one show is an important piece. I know I have a lot of clients who, oh, I want to do this show, I want to do that show. We want to keep them at least in a window of time, or maybe even just for a season, focused on one,
Mhm.
and utilizing the show as a natural extension of your business is the thing that I focus on most with Thrive Loud Productions. Where it comes to those that are doing a show for maybe a passion project, or it's a window, pick the time and make sure you're not using too much of the time. Maybe pick one day a week, or that you're focused on the podcast. We do one day that I only do interviews on our particular program. We do one day that we actually are focused on the marketing of it. So we let people who have their own program know that the focus is one. I mentioned the other number, 50. Uh, if I'll ask you it in a question form, Zev, if once a week somebody else was promoting you, your business, Zev Gotkin, your show, your book, your whatever it might be, once a week, and it didn't cost you anything, would you take that offer?
I certainly would.
I tell every single person that I run into, if you are a public figure or you're looking to promote certain things, you should be aiming in the lane that makes the most sense for you to be on one podcast a week. In a perfect world, most people are doing an episode a week. It doesn't always happen. We're crazy. We do 2 episodes a week. We used to do 3. And we now have gotten to a point that there's enough of a cadence and a frequency that if you did interview once a week, like our conversation right now, based on some flow and cadence, you'd get up to a point that someone is promoting you almost every week. And obviously, a lot of these shows might be twice a week or 3 times a week, or who knows what. One of my clients is in the advertising space, big time advertising person, runs a very successful firm up in Boston, and is a marketing expert. And they were looking to grow specific client business. We had a whole strategic plan. He went on the top 25 marketing podcasts that were specifically focused in his lane of advertising. We don't have to go into the specifically what it was, but
Mhm.
he went on 25 different shows. Here's what came out of him being a guest on those shows. He got hired by 4 new clients from his appearances on those shows. He
Wow.
got 2 panel opportunities to speak at big conferences and one, I think it was a $25,000 speaking gig, if I remember what it was, for all of that. And he literally leaned in on being a guest. Being a guest is another way to tap into the podcast. It's to understand that you have the ability to be marketing yourself. And the best part is you got to be the best freaking guest there ever is, because you'll market their show and they will market the bejeebies of you. It's very easy to do. They're creating the content, they're producing it for you. So, one, if you have a show and you want to host it, make sure it lines up with your one purpose in business, your one focus, the frequency of one, keep that in line. If you want to be a guest, aim to be on a podcast once a week, and there's 50 some odd weeks in a year, and that would be the joke. I'll give yourself 2 weeks of vacation to not have to do it, but if you average that, Zeb, I think you're in good shape.
That is an incredible formula. And I think, kind of what a lot of what you're doing is really the modern day PR. It used to be go on TV shows, go on the radio. I think now being on podcasts is essential. And that's a great ROI podcast case study,
Yep.
if I may say so. So just to close out, tell my listeners just where they can find you, connect with you. And if you have anything you want to plug or promote, now's the time.
So head on over to Thrive Loud. That's ThriveLoud.com for the website. If you're looking for everything you want to learn about Thrive Loud Productions, you want to learn about my speaking, my consulting, all the books you can get, everything is housed at Thrive Loud, where you can also access all 1,100 some odd crazy episodes of the Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond podcast. You also can find me anywhere on social media at Thrive Loud. Very easy. We make it simple. And maybe more specifically, if you're interested in using a podcast to launch your brand and turn your podcast into podcasts, go head on over to any one of these vehicles, DM me directly. You could find a way to do it. I'll gladly answer, and my team will actually set it up so that we could have a discovery call to figure out how we can get your voice connected to the world.
Amazing. Everyone, check out the links in the show notes. Connect with Lou Diamond and turn your podcast into podcast. Thank you so much, Lou. Speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.